Hello, welcome to the Calumet Wilderness with Sam Love. I am your host, Sam Love. Got something special for you today. This is episode number 50. So I thought I'd take on a couple of questions, some of the bigger questions that come up in conversation with people. I was going to film this over at the beach, but the wind picked up just a little too much, so I'm taking shelter here in the aquatorium, which, fun fact, my father used to be a lifeguard here in the early 60s. He told me more people drowned during his tenure here than any other point in Gary history. I don't know if I believe that, but he did used to work here. If you haven't already, please click that subscribe button. Thank you to everybody who has, and I really appreciate all the likes, shares, the comments, especially the comments, because that means we've got a dialogue going here. So without further ado, let me get to some of the bigger questions that kind of come up in casual conversations or deeper conversations with friends, naturalists, conservationists, restorationists, environmentalists, just people who love the outdoors, et cetera, et cetera. So I've got 4 of them for you here. We'll go through them real quickly. Well, the first question, and it gets worded differently, depending on who's asking, but it's a variation of, are there any unadulterated natural areas here in the Calumet region, Indiana Dunes, Northwest Indiana, et cetera? I'm going to wait for the wind to answer. Well, the short answer to that, I'd say no. No, I don't think so. I doubt there's a square foot of land out here that a human being hasn't stepped on. You think there's probably been a human presence here 9,000 years maybe? I don't have the exact archaeology in front of me. I know that they found evidence of people in the Madison, Wisconsin area about 9,000 years ago, and that's believed to be the first people to come into the Great Lakes region. There's probably a lot more discoveries to be made, and that's not my field, so I'm not going to say, but it's safe to say we've had people here for thousands of years. And the Native American people altered their lands, right? Controlled burns being one example of that. And then, of course, you have the legacies of industrialization and urbanization. If not directly impacted, then definitely indirectly impacted. We can look at climate change as an example of that. Certain species are disappearing, certain species are doing better than others. I know a lot of restorationists, some of them want to plant trees that will do better in warmer climates as opposed to trees that have been established here for thousands of years. So there's a debate on that. Even areas that look completely natural, have rare plants and all of that, have been altered at some point. And the ones that come to mind there are the Ivanhoe Preserve in the Brunswick neighborhood of Gary. It's a dune and swale, black oak savanna. There's all kinds of rare plants in there. I'm not going to tell you where or what they are, but I was surprised as hell when I took a guided tour with Paul Labus of the Nature Conservancy, and he told me there used to be, I think it was like a shed or a garage on that property. And you go out there, it doesn't look like anything's ever been there. But sure enough, it has been. Yeah, I would say everything's been altered in some way out here. Maybe there is 1 square inch of land that a human being has never touched or set foot on, but I kind of doubt that by this point. So another question, and this is related to that first one, is, it's something to the effect of, is there really a wilderness here? Or, do you mean it when you call it the Calumet Wilderness? Because I've talked about this in a previous video, but pretty much no cultural or legal or political standard is just about anything out here a wilderness. I'm currently in a beginning farming class with the Purdue Extension, and during one of our discussion groups, I learned something really interesting, that if you have 10 acres or more, that the state will basically declare that a wilderness, if it's undeveloped, and they will help you develop a management plan, whether you want to raise timber, whether you want to restore or create habitat or things like that. 10 acres, it's really not much. Most of the smaller preserves out here are maybe 30 or 40 acres. So in that sense, wilderness, I might be having a little fun with that term. Just as an aside, I think the closest to an actual wilderness that I've ever been to is the Iroquois, is it the Iroquois County or Iroquois State Wildlife Reserve down in, I think it's Kankakee County, Iroquois County in Illinois, which is south of Kankakee, south of Hopkins Park. Now there's a road out there, so it's not inaccessible. But I got out there, took a few steps out. It's like a sand black oak savanna, and I looked and like I didn't see anything for miles. Like up to the horizon, I saw zero evidence of human beings, any other infrastructure outside of that road. And I had nothing with me, you know, no phone service out there. I probably had like half a bottle of water left, no extra food, no first aid, no supplies, nothing like that. So yeah, I got out of the car, walked maybe a few hundred feet into this wilderness, and I looked around and I said, no, I'm going back to the car. I'm not ready for this. And you know, that's a humbling thing. Nature will kill you sometimes. A wilderness is a serious thing. So on that note, when I think about a Calumet wilderness, and I was talking with our good friend Mike McCauley about this, you know, it's one thing to drive over a river on a bridge over and over, and you see it and you think you know it, and then you get down in that river in a boat and you look up at that bridge. It's a completely different perspective. It's a different world down there. There are things down there that you don't notice from civilization, you know, the car, the bridge, the road, whatever that is. So in that sense, I'm not just doing a piss take where I'm, you know, Calumet wilderness, haha, being ironic. There are remnants left here. Usually they are on the fringes of our settlements and communities, but they are still here. They are much reduced, but they are still here. That's where the wild animals live. Wild deer nest, place of the wild animals. So in a sense, yeah, there very much is a Calumet wilderness, and I hope I've showed some of that in these videos. You know, it's a mix. Sometimes we go into subdivisions, sometimes, you know, we're out in open fields or in the woods or in the water, but nature is still here, and we can see it as something other than just an adjunct to our civilized lives, and I think there's a lot there. And if we mess with it too much, you're going to see what happens. We're seeing what happens when we do that. I mean, this isn't the best analogy, but it's somewhat of an analogy. You know, I think of Stranger Things, the Upside Down, right? That's right there, adjacent to their normal everyday world. But there are those access points, and you get in there, and it's somewhat similar, but it's also different. I don't like that analogy because, you know, the Upside Down's a place of horror and evil and blah, blah, blah. And we've done that to nature too much. It's not. And I do these videos to encourage people to get out into nature, to appreciate our landscapes, and to be comfortable in nature as well. Speaking of comfortable, I'm hotter than hell right now. Another question, do you get cold out there? You know, not really. As far as sources go, I'm going to give this a really quick rundown because I'm going to do videos on each of these. But as far as sources, I think I can break them into three basic categories. And the first ones are the old maps, which I absolutely love. And there's a number of good ones. They're high resolution scans online, like Solon Robinson's map or that 1874 map. Those are really excellent for interpreting what past landscapes would have been like. After maps, you know, there's the old books, the old county histories. You know, too often these get written off because they're products of a different time. And I think too many quote-unquote historians just write the whole thing off. They don't think these are useful sources to go through anymore. Yet so many of those histories don't even know the fundamentals of their own community histories. So we got to go to those old sources, and we need to use those for the purposes that we have today. And they're fantastic for getting a sense of what certain parcels were like around here, you know, where prairies were, where forest groves were, you know, where wetlands were, the original courses of rivers, things like that. So these are mostly free online. I think one of the best is Timothy Ball, who lived in Crown Point, wrote a couple of really great histories. He gets a bit moralistic sometimes as well. It's kind of funny. He doesn't like the name Glen Park. It must be named by Chicagoans because Northwest Indiana people aren't inclined to use the name park. And I think he got upset because somebody played a baseball game one Sunday out here. So, you know, those are kind of fun things to go in those sources. But yeah, the old books, definitely check those out. And, another source, which I've not used too much yet, but I'll be getting into these soon enough. These are some of my favorites, the historical aerial imagery. And one of my favorite sources, I love the name because it makes me happy. Indiana Historical Aerial Photograph Inventory. I think I got that right, but that's free online. Google that, and it's a series of aerial photography done between the 1930s and the 1960s. Then we can jump right over to Google, which has historical imagery going back to the late 90s all the way up to today. You can really start doing a history of how our communities have developed, how our natural areas have shrunk, or been restored. So what we got? We've got old maps, we've got old local histories, and we have historical aerial footage. You can do quite a lot with that. Well, the last big question that I get from folks just simply is, where are some of the best places to go nature hiking in Northwest Indiana, Calumet Region, Indiana Dunes? And I can answer that one really quickly. You are in luck, because the new mini-series that I'm going to start with the Calumet Wilderness is going to be completely focused on nature hikes of this region. I'm going to organize them by distance, starting with the shortest first, and then, well, the longest hike I've ever done was 14 miles, so we'll see. If I break that record, I'll do a video on that. I've got a visitor over here. One of the best things about talking to yourself out in public, or talking to a little box to yourself, is that people will want to come up and talk to you and see what you're doing, so that's really cool. That's probably the best thing about doing these videos so far, is just the encounters that I've had with people while I've been out filming, and just the conversations. And the best thing we could do to protect our environment is to be talking about it first. Just keep that appreciation up front, and then when it comes time to organize, we know what we're organizing for. So with that, look for the mini-series coming up real soon. I might have a few in between then. I get to things when I get to things. Visit samuelalove.com, my website. I'm going to be relaunching it pretty soon, but I've got some stuff up there. And yeah, get outside. Appreciate your landscape. All right, take care.